Welcome to BizMeds with Darris and Saad, where we give you the medications for your business. This podcast is all about the minimum effective doses you need to make a massive improvement in your business. Listen and enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of BizMeds. We are your hosts. My name is Saad.
And I'm Darris.
Nice to meet you. Kind of lost my train of thought there, so I had to fill it in with something. So in our last episode, we talked about, it's the last two episodes. We talked about the flow cycle.
Absolutely.
And the last one we were talking about the struggles, the struggle phase.
The art of getting unstuck.
Unstuck, exactly.
Absolutely.
So today, we were talking about this as we were getting ready for the podcast. What is the best thing going forward, and what are the things that people should know about? And you put this perfectly in the course, and it's called the One Big Domino. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think we should do some justice and share what does the One Big Domino mean.
Well, I mean, I think before that we can talk about, before we dive into what the One Big Domino is. I don't want to give it away too early, entice people to keep listening and, a little clickbait.
Yeah, exactly. The One Big Domino coming soon.
To a podcast near you. Is really the, we talk about flow and the whole purpose of, why we started the podcast was really to help entrepreneurs and business owners. And I think this is the area, we talked about that a lot of people don't really know they struggle with, or they think, right, they have this experience and they don't know how to wrap what it is around it. And, we're in an age where there's so much information out there. There's tons. Like if you think about, so even for those who are on, listening or even on YouTube, like if you just go to the main page, like there's so many things out there across so many different topics trying to catch your attention, right? I think, you and I, we go through this, and I'll say this, like, this podcast really, if we can help one business owner, that'd be amazing, right? One entrepreneur, amazing. And this is really kind of like us documenting, our continual, journey of continuing to scale and build and do bigger things. And so we say that, and Darris, what are you talking about? It's really, like there's just so much information out there. It is such a struggle. And we see it all the time. We're just, what do I do? What do I do? And it's the existential crisis I think every business owner, entrepreneur goes through. And it's like the weight on your conscience and your heart and your spirit of, there's just, I don't know, like I'm told to go do this course, or I should go do this. I need to focus on this. And there's a million different things about what I think I should be doing. And as a result, I don't do anything. Yeah.
And going back to like one of the previous things we talked about is you see somebody else being successful at one thing, and then you're like, all right, well, I got to do this too, because this is what worked for somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And understanding that those, like, there's a right message, but there's a right message at the right time for you as where you are in your business. Yeah. And so I think this is the episode where we kind of hopefully peel back those things. It's like, okay, what is one thing that I can implement to help me get clarity in that part?
Right.
So this is hopefully what we're going to be talking about today. We talked about the One Big Domino. Yeah. And so how do we cut through a lot of that noise? How do we cut through a lot of that, existential angst, the overwhelm that contributes to, us not really knowing what to focus on? And so that was the genesis or the catalyst for like, what's the One Big Domino? And you know what? A lot of this stuff it's not new. Like there's nothing new here, right? Yeah. What we're trying to do is maybe just tackle it in a way that's more accessible for people. And what is something that you can do immediately following today's episode that you can implement to help you move just that one step forward.
Right.
And get some more clarity and get you into action, right? What's the minimum effective dose of the medication that's going to get you to move farther, faster?
Quicker. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Getting the train moving. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say stronger, but
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense.
Well, your business would be stronger. You would be stronger if you did take that next step and started moving. So it works. It works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll make it all work. So when it comes down to it, we're talking about the one big domino. And, if you think about that idea, if I guess if you just close your eyes and think about, someone, you see those videos where there's a really elaborate, display of like all these dominoes lined up. And the whole premise is you knock one and they continue to fall.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about. So what are the things that you can do in your business that by doing that thing, there's a cascade effect. So it actually continues to take care of other things so that you don't have to. You expend the energy once kind of up front and it continues to build and takes care of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. Is where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. So now that we have a little bit of the background, how would you define the one big domino?
Okay, so the one big domino.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, you did touch on it a little bit already, but.
It's, so I think we have a good mental image, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Right. And the one big domino, I think, is boils down to a question. And there's a great book on it called The One Big Thing. And it's what's the one thing that by doing that makes everything else easier or not required.
Yeah.
Right. So what are those things? And that is really the whole premise of what's the one big domino. And then, by figuring that out, we can then leverage flow, right? Our actions, we can align our actions to make sure that what we're doing is actually the right thing. The thing that's going to give us the most payback, the most value. And yes, the idea is we want to put a little bit of energy up front, invest once so that we don't have to continually invest in that time, energy, money, continually to solve the same problem over and over, right?
So a template kind of thing.
Yeah, a template. Could be a system.
Yeah.
Right. So things that, that's probably where most business owners are going to get the most amount of value is, what system or what thing can I build or create or do that's going to make all these other things much more simple. Yeah. So if you have, people that are maybe taking orders over the phone, right? Is it a checklist that helps them make sure they capture everything, right? So that they're not forgetting and things like that. That might be a really, simple way to what's that one big thing that makes a lot of things easier.
Instead of creating a new one every single time. Yeah.
We're trying to rely on a really complicated training process, right? We got to keep training people for a month to do this what should be a very simple task. And we're making it very complicated, right? Yeah. Or how many times are we doing the same manual thing? Are we like taking information over here and then we're entering it over here and then we enter it again over here and we just touch it over and over and over. And really we're losing so much time and energy doing these like menial tasks. We're not actually moving forward and they're not value added whatsoever. We're just paying people to do this job that could actually probably be done once and right.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Now if we wanted to dive into that, right? So I think it's really, we tie it to flow. It's like, okay, well, this is the art of making sure we're focused on the right things, right? And that is different depending on what size of business, how many employees, like where you are in the maturity model of that. And there's a framework, the 5 steps to freedom. And it's really, like at different stages, you need to focus on different things.
Yeah.
And we talked about, let's talk about a specific example of what that might actually mean. Yeah. So let's talk about us, right? Yeah. So there's the coaching side of what we do and working with business owners to help them. Well, if you think about that, like what's the main bottleneck when you're working one-on-one with people?
Understanding what it is they're looking to, or just kind of working on that space where their energy and focus focus should be.
Right. So yeah, that's one of the things that's main contributor. So there's, and that really is a function of time, right? We end up spending a lot of time working one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so as business owners, entrepreneurs, it's that, okay, what's the one thing I can do that makes that either easier or not required?
Yeah.
And so like if we're looking at scaling, and I think most of the people, that ideally are listening to this podcast are thinking about, how do I grow my business?
Yeah.
How do I make it operate much more effectively? How do I get it bigger? Right. What we did was we looked at it and said, if we are continually spending all this time, like there's only so many hours in a day. Right? There's only so much mental, emotional energy I can expend, and we can expend on a day-to-day basis dealing with people to actually provide them that service one-on-one. So it becomes very time intensive. Yeah. And then we can bottleneck. So we become the bottleneck. So unless we're able to replicate ourselves, right, we will always be capped out. We will level out, and that's it. And then as a result, revenue, everything is capped.
Yeah.
So so when we sat down, it was like, what's the one thing by doing this thing, it makes everything else easier or not required, right? Which is why we created a course. So now we uncouple ourselves from the time delivery, because now it's not a one-to-one relationship, it's a one-to-many. And so that is, I think one way to think about the One Big Domino. And I'm going to challenge people that, they probably have taken very little time to think about their business that way because they're so busy putting out fires and things like that. And let's relate it back to the whole idea of flow, right? We use flow as a leverage point to help focus on these things. Well, if we're focusing at that time on the one big thing or the one big domino, life gets infinitely better. And of course, we're going to spend the energy once to do something that makes everything easier.
Exactly. Reminds me a little bit of an example of one of the things I used to, actually, I'm not going to name drop the company, but I used to work there as a consultant, and what they used to do every morning, 8 a.m., would look at, I feel like if I drop what the name of the equipment
look at a certain number that would indicate something.
Yeah, they would look at a certain screen that would let them see a certain number, and they would take that number and plug it manually into an Excel file.
Right.
Every morning at 8 a.m. So maybe on the outside, first thing I said was like, what, why? Like if that number is already present, why are we hand bombing it? So they had somebody hired full-time just to do that. And
it's like a very reasonable spend of money and energy.
Like it used to bug the crap out of me because it's just like, why do you have somebody, one, full-time doing that? Two, they're not growing their skill set whatsoever. Like, so anybody that's in that position, like, again, think about the one big domino. Like, how do you progress from here? If you're doing the same thing every single day and it goes through the same 3 hours every single morning, and it's going to be there the next morning, how do you eliminate that from having to do that? Sorry, there's a little bit of a qualm. You can probably sense the passion.
I couldn't tell it all.
So, got very boring very, very quickly. Finally suggested to them, hey, you know what? Why don't you automate that process and then utilize your resources into a different area and eliminate that bottleneck hiccup? Because a little bit of backstory on that piece, so what they would do is have that one person sitting in between. That Excel file would go out to the facilities. So they would wait every morning
to other places.
Yeah. So they would. But facilities is a very broad spectrum.
Yes, absolutely.
So they would wait for this report every morning before they were able to look at it. But they also had access to the actual live thing. So now, again, if you are on the outside, all you see is this rotation of things happening that don't need to happen.
Right.
But yeah. Anyway,
I think it's a great example, and I'm going to guarantee in most businesses there's a ton of that. there's a ton of energy being put into things that could be solved and free up people to do such higher value work, right? And that would actually move. And so when it comes as an entrepreneur and a business owner, like what most people don't spend the time to really think about, like what that stuff is, like what those things are that can move the needle, like, and make things not required and solve multiple things. And so the challenge is, so for the business owner, the entrepreneur, is thinking about your business differently, right? So just because you've done it this way doesn't mean it's going to, like, that is the best way. And the biggest benefit you will have of sitting back and taking time to think through just that simple question, what is the one thing that by doing that makes all these other things easier or not required? Like that is what's going to stimulate your brain to start answering the right question. Versus, oh, I'm going to do this process and it takes 5 people X amount of hours to basically do the same thing. And we're it's the equivalent of taking a piece of paper and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to put it here. And then you come along, you grab the piece of paper and you're going to move it there. And then I come along and I grab that piece of paper and I move it here versus, oh, if we just grab that and put it there right at the very beginning. It's like we've eliminated all of that.
Less hands in the kitchen. So I know you mentioned that, we put this together into the course and how that's like creates that one big domino for us. So could you elaborate a little bit more on like how building that course in our case creates that big domino for us?
Well, yeah, I think I touched on it, and it's really what it does is it uncouples us from having, we remove ourselves as roadblocks and bottlenecks, and it removes time as a bottleneck. So now instead of, we have capacity for only X amount of clients and X amount of time to deal with those, because, and to be fair, you can't do that kind of work
every
day, all day. And then you now have zero time to actually do other important things. And so you will be capped out at every level. And so when we create the course, now it's the idea of leverage, right? So how do we reduce the input cost and absolutely maximize the output value of that? So what we can do is say, well, now instead of us having to sit there and walk a business owner through this whole process, we've done the hard work. We created the course, and within 3 weeks, we can take you from having, probably very little skill in the area flow to where you now can leverage a full day, and in that day do more than you've ever done in an entire month. That becomes, and it's focused on the most important things. So those dominoes. So it kind of works on multiple levels. And so now we don't have to, like, it's a one-to-many relationship. And that course we can leverage indefinitely. So it can be offered around the world, right? Someone in Europe can buy that course and they can execute on their own time. And that's not, while we're sleeping. So that's a huge domino, right? So now you're not limiting yourself to, one specific market here. Like that is probably a really big example of like what a One Big Domino is, right? And there could be smaller ones like, what's this process? What does that do? So that's hopefully that.
It totally answers it. And you said it exactly the way I was kind of hoping you'd explain that. That it's a one-to-many solution. It's not a one-to-one type of solution, and might not apply to somebody else. It's a one-to-many. It applies to anybody in the world, any type of business, because again, it's a framework that works. You just have to solve for X, and you are the X, right?
Yeah, and it's what are the dominoes? What are the dominoes in your business that you're not thinking of, and you're probably not thinking of? So now let's make it even more clear for people. So in any business, the oxygen and blood of your business are leads and sales. I don't care what kind of business you're in, like that's what it is. So that's the oxygen and blood of your business. So if you don't have all the leads that you could possibly ever want, then that's probably an area where you Like
Could
there's
grow and
probably areas that you will have some dominoes in, right? Like what are those things? And thinking about that from a one big domino perspective will probably start to get your creative juices flowing. And how can I solve this? The other part is the sales, right? So unless your conversion rate as high as it should be, or is your sales process too slow? Is it taking too long to convert a lead into a sale? Well, there's probably things that can help and speed that up and fix that so that it's basically making that it's buttery execution, right? It happens faster.
Yeah.
And so now you have, more leads, more sales, and then you can use that cash flow to solve probably some other challenges and other bigger dominoes that might require some bigger steps, but they're, again, allow you to scale. And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
And then you can, and that's really going to depend on where you are. Like, those other things become more,
Customized.
well, there's other options, depending on your business and your model and where you are in the maturity model of your business. Like if you are, pretty established, you have, 10 employees, like your ability to look at dominoes and your ability to leverage other people to help with that is going to be very different if you're a solopreneur, right? And you have your own shop. You're like, okay, well, now I have to figure
I like
this
that
out.
solopreneur.
No, entrepreneur. You move from entrepreneur
Entrepreneur
to business owner, where you're actually moving things and you have systems. And that's, and I think maybe that's also another way to look at it is, what kind of system can I use? And that becomes leverage. And, the idea of asking that one question, what's the one thing? What's the one big thing? What's the one big domino that makes this easier or not required, not necessary? Like just scheduling time to do that, sit with that question is going to give you extreme clarity on what you need to focus on. Yeah. And if you're really honest with yourself and you sit with that question for a good 30 minutes, an hour, and you block off some time to do that, which again, most people won't do that. But if you're looking for that clarity, asking that question will start to guide you. It will help remove all the additional noise around what should I be focusing on. That will give you very clear focus. So, we talked about if you're a business, and you probably, the two key areas we always see when we're working with clients is that marketing and sales part, right? That's the biggest thing. It's probably where you're going to find the most bang for your buck, like early on.
Exactly. Yeah. And the one big domino ties back into one of our previous episodes where we're talking about flow blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that figured out and honed or polished, and just like you mentioned, if you don't dedicate time to that and sit down and like really figure out where your resources and energy should be focused, you will end up into a flow block. You won't have that runway that you're hoping for to actually chop down tasks and move forward. This will kind of just be that hindrance, and taking that first, obviously, step to sit down and analyze and understand what you need to be focusing your energy on is going to be the benefit on you.
All about helping remove the block to flow.
Yeah.
Right. So not having that clarity is going to be a flow blocker, right? Yeah. So we talked about one of the flow blockers is not having clarity, and one of the flow triggers is, clear goals.
Clear goals.
Yeah. And by doing that, you can then now align your time to say, oh, well, I can, if I'm scheduling a flow block, we talked about during the flow cycle, oh, I got 90 minutes scheduled. Well, now you know exactly what you need to focus on, because that's your highest priority item to help you move forward.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah. Smooth as butter.
Buttery execution.
Exactly.
So that's the essence of, the one big domino. And that will help you really get really crystal clear on the most important things for you. And you said it like very well at the very beginning, right? Where you see other people having success. And yes, there's a thing to modeling success, but there's a thing to doing the right thing at the right time in your business. Yeah. And by asking yourself that question, you can start to get really good clarity on what it is. And then that's what you execute on.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's probably a good place to end that. We're going to be a bit early on this one.
Well, actually, we're kind of just on the precipice of like going a little too crazy. But yeah, no, I think that ties perfectly into like the rhythm of how to get your clear goals, how to get into flow, how to move smoothly into the next stage. And I think should I spoil what our next episode is going to be about?
It's not.
Okay, all right.
We're going to keep you guessing.
It's going to be
back for more. Stay tuned on our Instagram at Velocity Biz, at Velocity Biz Coach.
And make sure you guys are subscribed. Have that bell icon ringing, letting you know whenever the next banger's coming out. So,
and as always, we are really about what's the minimum effective dose. Like, what is the one thing that you can do that's going to provide you enough momentum and to create that velocity and that speed in your business. So stay tuned. We're going to keep delivering these to you.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode on the One Big Domino. Yep. Thanks, Saad.
Your hosts again. My name is Saad.
And Darris.